B. Okay, so it's playback. I've already uploaded it to the.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to record over, or do you want to keep it there, or what?
I've already uploaded, but let's go ahead and record, continue recording, because it's supposed to run 17 hours.
Okay, so we want to, then we want to,
We just want to continue recording. It should fill the screen when you take it.
I'm not getting anything on the screen there.
If I stand this right, it keeps coming around.
Don't block it, I like it.
Yeah. Okay, so now we want to do,
That's yesterday's.
right, so I thought if I went,
You just start taking there if you.
oh, is that the time?
Yeah, it's the recording time. So he's just starting. Actually, you can take over. I'll upload
Sorry,
it.
well, if you want to play with it, it's just,
I just want to record again,
Yeah.
just to get more.
Hello. You think you have to get your snow blower out in enough time?
I don't know.
okay, well, wait, there's this,
I had it ready to go to
okay,
today.
this is what I'm not
And
tracking here, okay?
That's fast.
Well, no, this one above it, this thing's
The
like the
wind
next,
blew it all, I didn't have to do a thing other than clean off the deck where the wind would swirl and drop some.
See, that's a pretty good sequence right there. It's a touch.
I was ready as well.
The shoes under the front under the snowboard, on that blacktop, it grinds them off pretty fast.
Yeah, but I wish I had blacktop because I'd rather replace the shoes and have to keep throwing rocks through them.
That's why I had,
Every time you pick up a big rock, it's like, okay, there's another piece of steel to heat up and unbend. And
that's why I had my driveway blacktop on there. For the first winter I used it, I bought a lot of shear pins.
yeah, keep
Oh,
some right
we
in
got
my
it.
pocket.
I did,
Oh, this last one I've got now.
you what?
I need it so.
Big heavy duty
Oh,
one
good.
goes on the front of the compact tractor. And it's
I
still
thought that thing would probably
break
be
a shear
done.
pin, but one will have to throw stuff. Also to throw rocks. I was starting to wonder if David's ever gonna take the plow off the front of his truck.
Oh. Anybody in the house, member of the Geek Squad, or?
You know how to use those cameras? Keep it a camera to go where you want it to go.
Nothing minor
Know where it
technical.
wants to go.
I had it going, and I did something.
If something's in progress, just do not disconnect power source.
But nothing access.
You can't put film in it, I can't work it.
There we go. I think that's,
You should just have to hit record.
which is this.
Ah, you got it.
While he's finalizing that, just so everybody knows what we've done. I did, you go to the draft section now, I did upload Bruce's stuff earlier, so there are all, right now we have all 18 sections there.
Did you get my note on feedback on that? You haven't checked email in the last hour or two.
Well, in the past, how long?
Hour?
Well, I have.
Found out that 2 lines are basically impossible to do.
Which two are they?
2 I added trying to clarify tonality. There is no software to do it the way it was done, so I pulled them.
Oh, okay.
Then you have to pull them off of here.
Well,
I sent you a note telling you which 2 lines.
all right, I'll fix them.
It's minor.
You can forward that, what I forward you to, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yours is cleaned up better,
Yes.
so I sent the cleaned up copy along.
Yeah. So the other thing is what we did in Article 12, just kind of quickly finalize that too. This is one I'm working on today. We talked about the different setbacks. We'll take a peek at them and make sure all my notes were right, but this looks, you know, a lot cleaner. See how I just basically broke it into the front and then the side rear. Okay, instead of having all these different rows. Because basically we decided that we weren't going to have it different for the GMAs. Just basically we did it by tier, not by GMAs. Before, all the rows were just the same in the GMAs. So then I just basically did that. Then we have everything we talked about. Then the same thing here. And the height was 65 all the way across, so I left that alone. And then here, I wasn't sure if we were going to do something different for this last thing on Route 9. Because we really didn't get into that for these bigger projects. So, okay, so anyway, that's,
Yeah, because you're talking about,
big giant things.
big rollers, no?
Right. So, all right, well, just, like I said, take a peek at that, make sure it's what we agreed on. And then the only other thing is, I don't know what it's back. I put a note on the top here, internal reference article, an article is not corrected. So just make sure if anybody asks you or whatever that, yeah, we already know that we haven't done this yet.
Yeah, I did it internally for the,
I think they're right. We want to
well,
double
they
check,
have to be
but
double checked, but I did do it initial because there's enough going back and forth. I didn't want people
too confused.
too confused.
But clearly we don't have, R5A anymore, stuff like that.
Right. I didn't do it between articles yet.
You should have said, quite no last name, wasn't you?
Oh, different days. So anyway, Dave, we also asked Dave yesterday to take a quick peek. If you guys looked at your email today that Dave sent out about the FAA or FCC thing. So then, did you see the one I wrote out about the FAA thing? So
I did.
basically, in the FAA one was under changes for handling airspace matters. Okay, and this is actually just they just made some new changes in it in August. And then you go down to 6-3-8, evaluating effect on VFR operations, height of structures. Structures are of concern to pilots during the climb, after takeoff, low altitude operations, and when descending to land. Any structure greater than 500 feet above ground level, or structures of any height which would affect landing and takeoff operations, requires extensive evaluation to determine the extent of adverse effect on VFR aeronautical operations. So, I would think that we might want to consider, 500 feet. That's as being like a cut. If it's going to be more than that, then we can have like a process for going more than that, because the FAA is going to be involved if it goes more than that anyway.
Yeah, I can live with it.
So,
What do we want to, the FCC is 200 feet.
for painting and lighting.
No, this is tower height.
Right, well, that's actually another FAA requirement. Actually, I looked up the FCC, I looked into the FCC thing too.
But the registration of FCC antennas at 200 feet or greater, you have to register in the system they have. But under certain areas, it's less than that. They got a system called TOAir, if I recall correctly, and you put in the coordinates, and it's some kind of GIS thing. It'll tell you if it has to be registered or not.
Right, so that's a registration requirement. So we can look a little bit more into, if we want to go down to that level of detail, say you've got to
I don't think we need to do that. It's just, I think we ought to make it low enough that, if someone's going to put up FCC approved tower, they're going to have to go to it. I mean, broadcasting and everything else, there's a lot of other stuff. But if you saw that, it said placement is generally left up to the local authorities.
And because of the fact they're going to have to get those other
You know,
things
broadcast
anyway, I
or
don't think we need
TV
to worry about
or,
it.
so,
Right, but if we just basically, I just think of it, what we have now is still, like you were talking about ambiguity, is we have still, I mean, I read that thing, you know, a bunch of times the past couple of weeks after we rewrote it, I just thought it was ambiguous. So I thought we could do something here, an FAA thing, apparently there's an FAA thing that jumps on it at 500 feet, so if for tier 3, which kind of leads me to the next thing on the height thing too, you know, I looked up, on the rest of it, you know, I looked up tower heights for different things. You know, in Fayette County, Georgia, they actually have a 500-foot tower for all towers or antenna. And then there's a version that I put in that Bruce might like. Bruce likes to go with whatever you need to do what the job is. So they actually define what your job is. They go, all towers excluding alternative tower structures shall be structurally designed to accommodate the following minimum numbers of carriers based on the height of the tower. Up to 70 feet. If you only have one carrier, you get a 70-foot tower. If you have if you have 2 carriers, you get 70 to 120 foot. If you want 3 carriers, if you want to go up to 150, you got to run 3 carriers. If you want to go to 180, you got to run 4 carriers. If you want to go up to 250, you got to put 5 carriers. And if you have a tower that's more than 250 feet tall, you got to put 6 carriers on it. So that's kind of along what your thoughts are.
You know, there's a lot of people who wish they had that here because, you know, since they put that one up on Pt1, one carrier, they wouldn't let anybody else on there.
Right. So this
They
kind
did
of
it on purpose, and they've been, I guess from what I've talked to various people about, they've been, you know what about it.
right, right. So anyway, this is you know, that's another way to look at it, to avoid, and that actually avoids having multiple towers in your community too.
Yeah, that's their point.
Okay, that's the point for that particular one. And then there was I looked up low power ham radio towers that could range from 25 to 100 feet. You know, those regulations are all over the board. 65 actually is fairly common. And then I found a curve for cell tower heights on that link I sent out, and then it says there are around 25,000 in the 400-foot range, you know, looking at the curve, and then there's about 17,000 in the 150 to 200-foot range across the United States for cell towers. And then for wind turbines, I kind of did a little bit of punching around. 10 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts are about 100 feet in the cell. 200 kilowatts to 500 kilowatts tend to be about 150 feet. 1.5 megs tends to be around 200, and 3 megs tends to be around 330 feet. So those are just like broad ranges of an SL.
Right.
So that kind of, if you're trying to think about, well, where does this stuff all lie within each other, that's what we're talking about, for where stuff lies within each other. And I'm thinking on the back, I should have kept that thing open. One thing I was thinking of back on Article 12, that we talked a little bit about last night. Oh wait, back up here. No, I didn't do anything with the noise row yet. I didn't know if this was necessarily something that we wanted to do. Because if somebody puts up, you know, if somebody has like a small, let's just say that they have a small business and then they put up just a wind turbine to run their own business, which in the back of the ordinance says you can just do it on your own with a code enforcement officer permit. But, so if you did it at your house, you know, you could just do it. But if you had like a accounting business and you had 3 employees, you normally would be in tier 2, but you said, I want to put up a wind turbine next to it, you're going to make it into a tier 3 project.
That's occupied structures.
Okay, I'm sorry. Where did I get that idea from?
Maybe somewhere else.
But if you were putting up a small turbine and it's for the residential use,
Well, you know what? So hang on a second. So maybe we don't have anything involved. So it does say occupied structures. You're right. So maybe we don't need to worry about it then.
I don't think we need to worry about it.
Because we don't have an unoccupied structure height that drives it here. All right, my misread. That's what happens when you stay up too late at night trying to read this stuff. So, all right, well, that was my concern. I just didn't want to take something that otherwise was not a big deal and make it into a big deal. So that was,
We still had 12 factors. I noticed the chart still had 12. But we went down to 11.
oh yeah. I'm sorry.
It went down to 11. Oh.
We
okay.
eliminated.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah, you need to eliminate one row.
on the form.
It's no big deal, it's there, but you never use it.
It's a discrepancy, somebody will point it out.
Well, and I want to try to get as many of these little details as we can. Article 12. All right, got it. Okay. And, okay. So I started to prepare some notes for what I wanted to cover at the hearing. So before we get into the actual, how we're gonna do the actual hearing part, what I thought we'd do, I thought it'd be good to take, hopefully maybe around 20-ish minutes, and I was gonna just set up the slides, walk through some slides. I made some notes here, I typed some notes up for what I'd like to talk about. It's basically going to quickly show some Clifton demographics, some housing and things like that, and other people demographics about Clifton. So I thought that'd be just good, just so people can understand. Then I had dug up some other information about, what people pay in town for rents and mortgages, and people's just work habits. And I pulled most of it off the census site, and I gave a link to that. So I just thought just try to, so people can have an overview of what we're looking at here for the type of people in town, just on a very high level. And then, a brief history of the ordinance. I talked about, how we worked on it from 2006 to 2009. And then we had a product, and then that's when we had several meetings, and then it was determined at that time that it was too restrictive. And so then so actually the planning board recommended at that town meeting to turn it down. So we did. And then we completely revised it, and then we actually finally published, something in June of 2010. And so we've actually published the first product that got rid of all the little sub-ordinances that we used to have. And then we did that was actually a major rewrite. And then we did the first little revision in 2011. So then, kind of that brings up to why we're doing this revision. So I just basically indicated that, the current version is hard to follow. It has a lot of sequencing errors with repeated sections and things like that. It's it's ambiguous on site plan reviews. Is inconsistent on larger projects. Now that we have reconsolidated, basically all large projects have to follow essentially the same standard all the way through. It doesn't mix and match as much. It's too restrictive in some circumstances for small businesses and home businesses. It uses the wind energy standards. It uses standards for gas turbines, not wind turbines. There are some unenforceable submission requirements and some difficult to enforce operational requirements. And we also have a big section there, I think it's in Article 2 or 4, I forget which article it's in. The article about public participation where we pick parties, interveners. You might not have looked at that, because you're too busy working on this other wind stuff.
All I did was glance through it, I didn't go into it in detail.
But I picked that, I don't know if anybody else looked at that. I tried to create a process, because if you remember when this Pisgah Mountain project came in, there was like all kinds of discussion about parties and who could be a party and everything else. It was we took several meetings just to kind of, dope that whole thing out, and it was difficult for us, and because we hadn't really had to confront that situation. So I looked into Vermont and outlined the process for that. So, I want to make sure people are aware that we actually have a process for interveners now, so they can go in, and so people have, it's not like a big question in the future. And basically, I kind of the sub to that was that it was not really defined and it's inadequate for today's challenges. So basically, I kind of put, you know, a little planning board philosophy up, you know, and if you guys have an issue with it, you know, we can adjust it, but I said that the ordinance ensures that everyone has a fair shot, it doesn't discriminate, and it provides and encourages diverse, sustainable development in the community. And I said that, you know, we felt that it's, at best, it's unethical to intentionally build a regulatory framework to thwart otherwise legal development by going well beyond proven science to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And at worst, it's illegal and unconstitutional. So I don't know if you want to go that far or not. I mean, I was just putting together notes from different things. I mean, I know you probably agree, but I don't know if other people agree. I'm welcome to pull it if you would like to.
Well, yeah, I do agree.
I knew you would, but that doesn't mean there are others. I know we have other people here
Right,
too.
so it's, speak up, folks.
I mean, you can disagree, it's okay.
Yeah, I don't have a problem, I'm not over.
That's close enough to my own feelings.
I thought you would like it. I don't know, for Jared?
I'm gonna keep my 2 cents in my pocket right now and continue on.
Okay. So basically, then I just outlined the process and that we did the weekly workshops. I'll bring this website up to show people, you know, what's going on, show the little meeting minutes that we have. And then Jessie's been posting her videos, so we found that website. I'm gonna pull that link up, so people know that that's out there. And soon, you know, once we get these technical things straightened out and Dave becomes our expert, we'll get those. He has a site labeled on YouTube now to do it. We just don't have stuff up yet because we're just not good enough yet.
Good YouTube, oh yeah.
So anyway, then we put the, basically, you know, I talked a little bit about, you know, how we weighted the data in the comments, you know, and talk a little bit about, I brought up some examples of roughly, you know, what, if you look on racking and stacking stuff, like stuff from like large associations or large government entities and things like that, that was peer reviewed stuff is, you know, obviously, you know, higher for looking at, because I think we didn't actually come forth and just say this, but typically I kind of, you know, when we were reviewing it, that tended to be the philosophy that we had, you know, as opposed to, were the most important compared to, you know, a person wrote a letter to the editor of a local newspaper and said that they were concerned about something. I mean, there's you know, a difference in how you have to try to look at that if you're trying to write, you know, an ordinance. So I think that I just described that we would basically, how that hierarchy worked for us. And then I got into a little bit more specifics here. The major updates were from the Vermont state laws. Expanded the violation responsibility to include contractors and landowners. Expanded the tables in Article 6 to include all the standards in an easier to read and follow form. We made consistent all major development standards. We changed the environmental impact statement to a comprehensive impact statement. We clarified the submission waiver process, built the documentation trail for the process, clarified that no waivers are allowed from performance standards, so it's really crystallized there now. Clarified the standards for confidentiality and made crystal clear the planning board does not have an economic development role. Clarified the definition of pre-development conferences and provided additional time-limited protection for property owners who contemplate projects from spite actions by adjoiners. Expanded the public hearing process expanded the public hearing process time frame to reduce stress on the board and interveners to make arguments and study relevant facts, because, you know, as you looked over the time frames that we allowed for ourselves to go from meeting to meeting and get stuff done, it was so compressed that people didn't have time to make their arguments in the middle and do research between meetings, and it really, you know, made it uncomfortable for the planning board to have to work fast over some things, and I think if it was just the process was slowed down some, it would have been better for everybody. So, you know, I basically just expanded that. I clarified the times when developers and interveners must cease providing data so the board can conduct the analysis and make a decision. You know, clearly there's a little bit of a problem with that. It's gray. We did stop it, but I mean, I think there needs to be a black and white line, stopping point document prepared that says we're not taking any more feedback. which we really didn't do before. We had a vote on it, but we didn't really have a gate being down and locked. You know, and we need to have a gate. So I built a gate. I created the opportunity for interveners to contribute information if the board reopens the process to receive additional information from the applicant. So that kind of, in some ways, doesn't get to the point like you were talking about yesterday. Let's say you said let's say you approve the project, and then all of a sudden, like you brought up the example of that dam, then they found that fault line underneath after they were in the middle of building the dam. This doesn't quite get that far down the road, but so you've agreed to stop taking information, and then something comes up that you weren't aware of. You know, I created the opportunity to reopen that door, go back, get more information from whoever the applicant is, you know, and then receive that information, and then, you know, at the same time, the door stays open for the interveners. The interveners can respond to that information so that it's fair for everybody. So I built that mechanism into the process so that it all hopefully will work.
And to answer your question on that last night, there's a stop, you can put a stop order on the project.
Okay, there are
Yes,
mechanisms.
yes, you can.
Safety or.
Yes, you can put a stop order on the project, and then everything's reviewed from that second on.
Sounds
Basically an injunction.
Well, yeah, and that's enforced by the code enforcement.
So then, I also ensured that the board was empowered to place additional conditions on the project if it was approved. So in other words, you know, it's kind of, I guess, understood that you could put conditions on projects, but it wasn't really written out that we should or could. So now it's written out to tell you that you're perfectly capable of doing that. We also ensured the project commencement date begins the date of the final legal actions, including all the appeals through local, state, and federal processes. I know we've talked about that several times, and we've, you know, for this Pisgah project, we've expanded that, you know, extended that approval dates out. So but this really just solidifies that. We removed the local requirement for state mandated subdivision standards to apply to every single project. So before, the state law says that for site plans, if you have a regimented site plan ordinance, we talked about this a few weeks ago, you know, for like apartment complexes, somebody built like multifamily housing, so it would be for a 4-family house under one roof, you know, it would have to go through subdivision law. So you can do it under site plan, which is more appropriate than under subdivision law, because obviously you're not going to go out and set property pins, and it's not the same thing. It's more like a site plan. So this kind of covers that, you know, and the statutory law was made for subdivisions, not for site plans, and that was probably my oversight, because I think, you know, I encouraged Paul to do that before. You know, I probably shouldn't have done that. And then we talked about the family housing issue. And then we ensured businesses could use the modern illuminated signs to advertise. We talked about that. We made it easier to have a bed and breakfast or home occupation with CEO approval. We modified the tier impact assessment process to make it more realistic. We expanded the definitions, clarified and relaxed setbacks for new construction for non-residential sites. We expanded the allowed uses for various zones in town, provided definitions for different types of development, completely revised the wind energy standards. We moved all the definitions to Article 18, clarified and consolidated definitions for dwellings, occupied structures, etc., and removed ambiguity and inconsistent definitions. And if people do actually have a bunch of questions about some of these specifics of the, for background on some of the wind energy stuff, I have some backup notes for that that we can bring up, you know, at that time, or we can actually cover that in the second public hearing in a little bit more detail. But either way, you know, I can handle that too. So.
Yeah, well, I'm making up a list of the documents that we've used as a,
If you can type that up so we can print that and pass that out, that'd be great.
okay,
So,
that most of the rewrite has come from, and why some things have been removed.
all right, that's good. So, I listed a bunch of stuff here. Does anybody have any questions about? I know it was kind of a very fast walk through, but I tried to be as complete as possible and upfront on everything that was done.
Unfortunately, until you know what questions people are going to ask,
Well, this is,
comments.
well, no, this is just to tell everybody what we did, kind of in a summary format. That's the purpose of this.
How long would you expect that
I'm hoping,
presentation to take?
I'm hoping 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
That's my goal. And I'm hoping not to be, at that point, answering a ton of questions, you know, maybe a couple of specific questions that I, you know, if we really have to, because what I really want to do is focus on the hearing, but I just want to, there's people, like, these guys have been coming like every single meeting, and these guys have come every single meeting, you know, so obviously, clearly they know what we've done every meeting, but there's going to be other people here who haven't come to any meetings, you know, and I want to give them just the nickel show for what happened, like in a nutshell.
And that's me, not coming in.
How many man hours do you have time?
And this so far,
All of this.
oh, not
Depends on where you start
hundreds, maybe, I don't know. Probably if you included like last year too, probably at least 1,000. I mean, just me alone, and Bruce probably has close to that, and then you got everybody here. There's a lot. There's probably a couple million years.
Let's see, if you added up for all of the years, I wouldn't be surprised if it's.
But just on this one rewrite, 'cause we just on the research.
Other than you want, I think.
If I,
That's a half year's worth of work, right?
I
there. You
know.
don't work 8 hours.
I know it's not.
well, some weeks, like
You spent like 55 hours on a couple weeks ago.
last week was, my wife wasn't really happy. I spent all but 2 hours of the week was, including a couple of nights. Last night I was being chewed out again too, so I don't blame her.
Onto the original one that we did, we was at meetings until 11, 12.
I know, that's with Paul, that's
Yeah.
Paul's fault.
Yeah,
Paul, you can even take credit for that?
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
He said when we did the original one, we were at meetings till 11 or 12 at night.
I never stayed till 11 or 12.
That's not what he remembers.
oh, I remember them 11 o'clock nights.
We're sitting around your kitchen table doing it.
And it wasn't just one night a week either.
But anyway,
That was crazy.
there's a lot of time involved in this.
I mean, because you have to add in all the time spent reading all this information.
Oh, yeah.
And then, for instance, just to give you an example, one of the things that was put on here by Stephanie, I'll give an example, last week. I think it was last week. Okay, first you go to that link, you read that. Well, you find out that that's basically an executive summary. Okay, now you start searching for the original document, so you read the whole thing. You find out that that few pages now is 50-some pages. There are some of these documents, what were some of the long ones, close to 200?
Yeah.
You sit there and read
Well,
200
Lee, I don't know if
pages
you've
or
been to the
something.
webpage or not, okay? But this is just the webpage. All this stuff, or most of the stuff was recently posted. Some stuff was posted a couple of years ago, has been out there for a while. But quite a bit of this stuff is stuff that's been done in the past, 3 months. All right, so this is all the stuff from the past 3 months. These are posts and then summaries for what was there. And this is, by name or by topic in some cases of different things. Some stuff that Stephanie hit. I think it was this one here, this one, as an example. So you go and you open this thing up, and then you come down through here, and you read through all that and kind of get your head around it.
And
keep
then
going.
you start Googling every individual
Right.
topic and it,
So then,
look it up.
right, so then you have this to go through. So basically, right here, there are 6 pages of references. And it's all broken down. I mean, somebody spent quite a bit of time putting this together, and Bruce, went through and looked at it, and some of it was, accurate, some of it was, not as accurate as it could have been,
And some parts of it we had already looked at, so you bring that up and that's that document I've already got.
Looks familiar.
And then you drop that one and you
I
go
know,
to the next
well,
one.
last week,
But sometimes when you get into a document, okay, this one has several pages of references, so you look up one of those, it'll have several pages of references. You end up spending a lot of time going back through it to find out.
What was depressing was last week I sent Bruce a link and he sent it back as Eric, I already sent you this link. I was like, I can't believe I've gone all the way around and dug myself back into the hole and sent him a link that he sent me, that's already been posted. And I'm like, oh my
I
God.
don't recall ever saying anything, maybe someone, has the Surgeon General ever made any
Not that I know of.
determinations on this, or any, official government
Nope,
kind of
there hasn't been.
National Institute of Health, or?
Well, funny you should mention the
EPA
NIH.
did a bunch of stuff on noise back in the 70s, but then they gutted that part of the department. And a lot of the stuff that they did has either just disappeared or it's been supplemented. They pretty much turned it over to the national, I would say,
See if I can find
Turn it
some
over to
Surgeon
the
General,
national,
maybe
uh,
made
different
Well,
standards.
I went to the
any
NIH.
absence of information.
One of the things I went to, I did look around this Montville site some, and there was an NIH link, and on the NIH link, one of them said that basically, because one of the claims is something called, what's it called, Bruce?
Vibroacoustic.
Vibroacoustic syndrome or disease. But according to the NIH, and I have to sort these maybe by Stephanie, because I posted it, she's one of the ones that brought it to my attention. I went to the NIH website and they said, the vibroacoustic disease is caused by decibel power of over 90 decibels, right on the NIH website, and it was an occupational health exposure.
Really?
That's what they said on the NIH website.
And it was first determined for people that were exposed to even much higher levels. At 90 decibels, you've got to be exposed pretty much 8 hours a day for months and months.
This is like right off the NIH website. It said, vibroacoustic disease I cut and pasted it, is an occupational disease occurring in susceptible workers who have had long-term exposure greater than or equal to 10 years to large pressure amplitude greater than or equal to 90 decibels and low frequency noise less than or equal to 500 hertz. So clearly it's not possible to be exposed to 90 decibels for 10 years at 500 hertz.
Well, the Department of Labor has, I think, a number of studies on noise for Department of Labor, claims, disability claims and all that, military particularly. They not relate to wind,
Right.
intercept operators, people sitting around with things on their ears all day long.
Right.
There's a big database.
It's huge, I know. They're
Nothing
like
I can find on wind, just
Right.
ambient kind of stuff out
Right.
there.
Well, most of the stuff that when you look for noise under wind, most of the concerns that people have seem to be for low frequency. So that's the area that you're looking in. So for the predominant exposures, through the Department of Defense, mostly through aircraft or engines and things like that. Though I guess maybe I don't really know that much about ship engines. So ship engines, maybe that would be where you're going to get your low frequency stuff. But for aircraft noise, it comes at a much higher frequency for the most part, and that's where they have issues.
Actually, there's a lot of low frequency. It's low enough so that even though it's at fairly high decibel levels, you don't really hear it. It's still below that threshold of perception. Because in those real low frequencies, the frequencies where the buffeting is occurring, you don't even hear those. Even people that have extreme sensitivity have to hit 60 or 70 decibels.
Well, I know at work,
Most people are.
most people at work, when they have hearing loss, when we go through and do it over time, it tends to be at the higher ranges. We don't really tend to get it much dropping out the low ranges.
Yeah, the hearing loss, yes. Yeah. That tends to stag at the
Which
highest.
is what he's talking about in those databases. That's what I'm answering.
Yeah.
And most of those charts, when it comes to occupational, there's a whole set of those charts of, as the decibel levels go up, they shorten the exposure times that are considered allowable. There's a chart somewhere, I've got it I'm not even gonna try to look for it right now. You can find a chart that says, I don't know just what it is, but like at 80 decibels, you can be exposed for 8 hours. At 90 decibels, you can be exposed for 4 hours. At 100 decibels, it's 1 hour. And on up into the really high ranges where, and even then, they have to.
Here's a summary of every single meeting that we had this spring.
I know that the
So
firefighters
you can go read all that.
have got to wear earmuffs now when they're in the fire trucks.
No, the standards are a lot more restrictive.
Because the noise level's so high.
So,
Well, I can tell you, in my car going down the road, my car is not particularly quiet, it's a Ford
Yeah.
Ford Focus. Just going down the road, dBA levels will be around 70, and dBc levels will be bouncing between 85 and over 90, and if you go by a big truck, they'll spike to 95 or higher.
Right.
My truck's loud.
And that's a car, that's not a diesel. Most diesel trucks would be even higher probably in the DBC, because well, I actually took my meter out near my tractor, which has got a small diesel. There's a lot of low frequency noise coming out of diesels.
Except for nowadays with the new motors that they've come out with, it's actually a lot quieter. You can't even hear them run anymore.
okay, next week. So, clearly, on the first goal is to have, voters and landowners in Clifton be able to speak. So if we have a huge crowd, probably the first tier we always traditionally have is voters, and the second tier tends to be landowners from these things.
Absolutely.
So then, if we have a crowd and we don't have a crowd, or actually we should even prioritize, even if we do, just to make sure that the voters and landowners can speak. People from outside of town, how do we want to, I guess, prioritize people from outside of town who come to speak or want to talk for whatever the reasons are?
If they're from, I don't know, from the surrounding towns, I would prioritize those as third. But if somebody is from Portland, I really don't care what I'm hearing from.
I'm not that interested in that either. I kind of agree with that. I guess maybe after landowners, maybe just, I don't think anybody from a state agency should come, but just because if the state agency is here, we probably want to hear from them if an unlikely event. I don't know. But I just want to make sure it's covered. So I'll actually put them right ahead of the towns. And that will kind of actually map a little bit into that intervenor process, because they're automatically can be an intervenor, state agencies. So
I'd be surprised if we have any state agencies.
I will be too, but I want to at least have it. I'm trying to also
I know.
prepare us for a little bit of a template so we can work off of it. So in the future, boards go to prepare a public meeting or whatever like this, that they have a thought process. I'm trying to build a little bit of a template as much as manage this next week's operation. So then, for this project, as far as the towns, the town over on that side is Otis first, right?
Otis.
Probably the nearest one,
So that's the nearest one to the project. So we want to hear from somebody from Otis,
If they show up.
and then Amherst or Eddington next.
Eddington, for proximity to the project, that they're far enough away that,
Amherst will be after that.
yeah. You have to